Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome to part 4 of my Arduin revisitation. Back in 1979 through about 1982, I had the distinct honor and pleasure of working for the world-famous Bob's Comic Books over on Brookhurst and Hazard in Orange County, California, as a paid dungeon master at the tender age of between 13 and 14, I want to say, where I would get paid about $1.75 an hour per player at the secondary room at the Unicorn's Lair, which was a big game hall, one of the first of its kind, at least in my recollection, where players would pay the owner, that was Bob Dreyer, and they'd get these little tickets for per hour if they were going to play. And of course, I let people play way more than they paid for, because it's just, one of those things. I was a kid, and but I would usually fill my tables with, between a half dozen to a couple of times I had 10 to 20 players, and I had a very long ongoing campaign through one summer. I want to say the summer of '81, maybe it was '82 at the end, and we would play and game all night. Sometimes we had the keys, and we would play every night until 3-4 o'clock in the morning. My parents were pulling their hair out, wondering where we were. And it was at that game store that I first came across the Arduin grimoires. A couple of my fellow dungeon masters told me about them, and I managed to be able to pick them up slowly over time from the game store next door, Bob's Comics. And I'd have to save up my money from working for Bob, or I would get them at store credit. I even got all the original modules, Caliban, the Howling Tower, etc. Even some of the cards that you could buy back then, the artifact cards and things like that. And it was, mind you, I was playing AD&D, and I had the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, the DMG, but then there were these little books, these little ancient-looking TV guide-sized homemade. They looked kind of, cheap. I'm not going to lie. They looked kind of indie, kind of underground, before there was an underground in that sort of community, or at least that I was aware of. Of course, I would learn later on that there were all kinds of other things going on. And in them, I found some of the craziest, scariest things I could throw at my players: the monsters, the treasures, the magic items, the spells that the bad guys would have, and if the players were lucky, they'd find a scroll or a spell book with a 10th level spell, or a 14th level spell, or some other piece of Arduin that I would slowly hand out to my players, including, of course, the artifact cards and things like that. And I ran the modules and made up my own dungeons. And one of the reasons for my popularity was because I fully embraced all of the things that were in the Arduin grimoires. Of course, there were a few other GMs that did the same thing, but they were kind of smelly and creepy looking and old. And so my table was filled with the younger crowd. And occasionally I had some older folks that were intrigued by my ideas and didn't quite, know where I was pulling this stuff out of, besides, the obvious answer. And I learned over the years, when Bob's Comics closed down, went out of business, and he disappeared, and probably eventually passed away from various things. He had his issues, and he was a great guy. I love him. I think about him all the time and miss him. He really gave me my first real big pat on the back, saying, "You're doing great, kid." And I kept on using the Arduin books, and my players would see those books, and they would see me pull them out from time to time and look something up, and it was just like, uh-oh, he's pulling out the forbidden knowledge, the secret information that nobody else could get a hold of, because they were out of print and unable to be found. And even Brookhurst Hobbies didn't know what we were talking about. That was the shop that was just down the street, well, a couple of blocks, more than a couple of blocks. But anyways, and my players quickly learned my long-term regular players, of which there have been scores of over the years, they knew if I pulled those books out, it was, it was on. Something serious was going down. Or on occasion they would be getting something fantastic, some sort of new magic item, the likes of which none of the other books had. Obviously my players had the Monster Manual and later the Unearthed Arcana, and they still couldn't figure out where I was coming up with these just wonderful treasures, as well as monsters to curdle the blood and send the bravest of parties packing out of the dungeon, because that's what Arduin was. It was the apogee of excellence when it came to dungeon mastering lore and of course implementing the new races and the player characters, the professions, and all the other things that Arduin added to the game. Just for us at least, it made it just something special, something unique. And of course, years later, I'm still using all of those tricks, all of those secret pieces of information, not just the things I mentioned, but Dave wrote extensively throughout the books on ways on handling combat and other things, how to build the world, how to populate it, how to give your locations great names and use evocative names that would sum up what the place was with just 2 words, sometimes 3, or 1 compound word. And all these years, been really close to 50 years now, 46, 47 years now I've been doing this, and I still to this day go back to the Arduin Grimoires, and now I have all 9 of the Arduin Grimoires and all the other books that came out years later after David had passed, and I was able to come across these things. And everything that he ever wrote, every idea he put down, I have tried to implement and tried to treat my players with something special, something beyond. And of course, it helped me to develop my own unique style of game mastering, which many people would call Monty Hall or Gonzo, and I wear those titles with honor. Those badges of excellence are to this day what keep driving me to keep playing these games. I mean, I've done it all, I've played it all, but I still every chance I get. I played in another game just a little while ago that was a lot of fun, something I hadn't ever actually done, and I always, we'll talk more about that later. But every time I think back on all the tutoring Dave did without ever having met me in person, all the wisdom he passed down to me and all the other players, and to think that now I get to work with George and Dave over at Emperor's Choice, and now Matt Tapp with Barrows and Borderlands, it's almost come full circle, and I've now been put in a position where I get to talk about it and invite so many new people into all of the greatness. Now, mind you, because it's been so long since Dave wrote his last words, many people have borrowed his information and his idea and his theories and his expertise and claimed it as their own. But thanks to Dave and George, a whole new generation of people are going to get to experience and benefit from all of his experience, not just as a GM, but obviously his real world experience flows into his books and all his writings, and there's more to come, folks. From what I hear, there's mountains of David A.Hargrave's work, and when you guys finally get those books in your hand and you finally realize the copyright date, when he wrote these things, and how many things came afterwards, and clearly, even if it was secondhand inspired by or informed by David A.Hargrave's work, it's undeniable that he was one of the founding fathers of role-playing games as we know them. Of course, the name Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson will never be forgotten, or at least not for a good long time, despite what certain people would say about them. David A.Hargrave deserves his own monument up on, the equivalent of Mount Rushmore, along with the other greats. But he was definitely one of the best, if not, in my opinion, just a absolute master when it came to sharing his ideas, his fantasies, his desire for the the great adventure that each and every one of us in this hobby gets at least a chance at. And I know that I'm never going to stop. I mean, here it is, several years later, and I went through volume 1, 2, and 3, and I learned things that I didn't, or I forgot. But there's always something to pick up. It's like when you read Lord of the Rings for the 17th time, and you come across something that you don't remember. It's going to spur an idea for your next game or your next daydream or what have you. There's always something new to be found, and I'm going to probably have to go through volumes 4 through 9 next week, but I'll give you guys a break, and we're going to be doing some new stuff here on the channel next month. But you can rest assured that everything that we do, everything we've ever done on this channel, even my son, absolutely, the first time he saw the Frank, just fell head over heels in love. He's a huge Hollow Knight fan, so he's like a whatever you call a bugophile. He loves his bugs, and the Franks were, if you could have seen those days when he was playing his character that I helped name, he was a fighter assassin. He was a fighter thief named Buzzkill. I thought that was a perfect name because of the logic and the fact that he would just buzz saw through everything that came his way, between the leaping and the javelins and the two-handed sword. And just it goes to show you that even the youngest generation in this hobby has something to gain and something to offer this hobby going forward from this moment on. And that's why Arduin and A.Hargrave will always be my secret weapon, especially for those know-it-all players that think they know everything, seen everything, done everything, and the rules lawyers like, well, I'm using a different set of rules. The Arduin Grimoires, you ever heard of them? No? Good. It's my secret weapon, and I'm keeping it that way. And so, well, obviously I can't do that. The cat's out of the bag, thanks to George and Dave, and with the Kickstarter, a whole bunch of people are going to get to enjoy that same experience and add those extra quarrels into their quiver, those feathers in their cap when they go to their table next time and they drop down those little digest books. Oh, what are those? Oh, just keep your filthy player hands off them. GM only kind of thing. Or, go to Emperor's Choice and do like I did, mow an extra couple of lawns so you can make an extra couple of shekels and send some money over to Dave and George. They'll be happy to send you some of the best books ever written for the hobby, regardless of what game you play. Even those people playing Traveler or Call of Cthulhu or any of the other new indie games coming down the road, there's going to be stuff in those books that you can guarantee was inspired first, second, third hand from David A.Hargrave, the true master of the hobby. So that's what I got for you this morning. I hope you guys enjoyed my little trip down memory lane. If any of you guys actually ever went to Bob's Comics or the Unicorn's Lair, go ahead and post a little comment. Let me know. Maybe you remember that skinny little blonde kid who had his tables full and the glaring-eyed GMs all bent out of shape because their tables were empty and they were, stinking up the place, and we were just having a blast playing some whatever it was we were playing, probably Dungeons and Dragons, with a little bit of Arduin mixed in just to chef's kiss the whole experience. I will see you guys real soon. Have a great weekend. Happy Halloween, and as always, happy trails.